Okay, we'll start now. Thank you all very much for coming. I'll introduce myself very briefly first. My name's Rob. I started teaching in the 1980s, so I'm quite an old-timer. I started to combine writing teaching materials with teaching in the mid-1990s, and I've been doing that ever since. In 1988, I was teaching in Brighton and I moved out to Barcelona in Spain. But despite spending most of the first 25 years of my life living in the UK, in England, I'd never been to Manchester. So I suppose, like many of you here, before coming I had to do some research online to find out practical information, to find out a little bit more about the city than I already knew. And so I used my reading skills to sort of do some research for my trip. So I started with this search, Manchester Airport to city centre. And the first thing that came up was this map, which was to a city centre, but not the one, the one I'd just come from. 17 hours seemed like a long trip to. So what I did is scroll down the page and I found these the search results here, and I skimmed through those search results to look for one that seemed the most promising for my purposes. And I wanted an overview of the different options for how to get to the city centre. And the first one looked pretty promising, to from the airport. So when I clicked on that, I actually found it wasn't what I thought it would give me. It had a menu with the different options, but you had to go through them one by one. So I chose the bus because I like public transport. And the next thing I did was I scanned that information for city centre, but then realised that I didn't know where the hotel was. So Manchester being a big city, it wasn't really a very helpful thing to do. So I went back to Google, which very neatly told me that the train was going to be the fastest way to get where I wanted to go. So that's where my hotel is, the Jury's in Manchester, and I wanted to find out a little bit about the hotel itself. So I went to TripAdvisor, which looked promising, sofa in the room, 4-star reviews, and I wanted to read through some of the customer reviews to see what people really thought about it. And this one struck me, this one brought a smile to my face. The verdict is in. Guilty of being excellent. Is anybody else staying at the Jury Inn Hotel? What do you think? Is that a fair reflection of... Okay. I mean, it's fine, isn't it? But I think maybe one of the manager's relatives wrote this one. And I'm not surprised to see only one person found the review helpful, maybe the manager. I did some more research online to find out more about Manchester, and like sometimes you do when you're online, you come across these texts where you just don't know what they are. And this was one of them. This came up. The link looked interesting, and it came up, and I thought, what type of text is it? Who wrote it? For who? And I still don't know. If anybody can enlighten me at the end of the talk, then that would be interesting. So just to resume what I went through there, I started off thinking about what I know about Manchester and what I wanted to know. I skimmed through those search results to find the one I thought would be most promising. I scanned that bus information for the city centre. I read in some detail through the reviews. I read them from top to bottom. I didn't skim or scan them. And at one point, even as a native speaker, I had trouble identifying a text type and a topic because the information wasn't familiar to me. And this talk is going to be about these things, these specific skills, these subskills as they're normally called. I'm going to talk about, I knew as well actually, a bit later. listening and reading subskills. And the talk's got two parts, and although it's called a talk, the second part it's a little bit workshoppy. So I will ask you to do something to talk to people near you. But the first part is going to be, I'm going to be making a case for giving subskills a lot more attention in class and looking briefly at how that could be done. And in the second part, I'm going to hand over to you a bit more and give you a taste of what it feels like to give subskills a priority when you're bringing material to your classes. Now, as native speakers or proficient speakers, I'm a bit wary of that word after the plenary, the first plenary, but you see what I mean? As a native or proficient or highly competent speakers, we use subskills without really thinking about it. I wasn't thinking about the subskills I was using when I was doing my research, for example. But what about our students? Now, these are teenage students, but I think what I'm saying applies to adult learners as well. I think some of them find it very easy to transfer the subskills they have in their own language to learning English. But my experience as a teacher is that some students don't. They don't find that change easy. And I think in some cases it's because they haven't really acquired those subskills in their own language, or they're not using them actively in their own language. And so they don't get transferred. So I think as teachers we have an important job to make sure that all our students acquire the subskills they need to be able to read and listen effectively, successfully. And my question is whether in teaching materials there is enough of a focus on subskills for that to actually happen. And my personal sort of view is that there isn't. I mean, course books do focus on subskills. Most course books, maybe all course books, focus on subskills. But if I just sort of looked through a few course books that I've used and I'm familiar with, I've added some things here which come up. You know, dealing with new vocabulary is obviously something that comes up in every course book I've seen. And these are some fairly common ones. And then I thought, you know, there are so many that could be focused on apart from those. And the etc. there really sort of refers to, that's the tip of an iceberg. There are so many things you could focus on. But it's not just that, it's that all of these subskills are in a sense formed by smaller subskills, like sub-subskills if you like, which work together to sort of like form a larger skill. And to give you an example of that, are there any Spanish speakers in the audience? Okay. You'll find this a little easier, or a lot easier in fact, but I'm going to show you something that's in Spanish. And what I'd like you to do is to think about how many different types of text there are in what I show you. And as you're doing that, to reflect on how you identify the text types. What was the process you went through to identify them? So I'll give you a couple of seconds to do that. Pretty small, isn't it? Yeah, not reading it is good. Yeah, I think what I'm wanting to do is to sort of like the text types identifiable not by reading but just looking at other features. I've got a pointer in it, haven't I? Oh, no. Yeah? I mean, what is the whole thing? The newspaper. It's the front page of a newspaper from the like a website. And I mean, I identify this. I don't know about you. There are articles. There's an advert. There are adverts. Yeah. Yeah, so it's more than I thought actually. Yeah, a menu. Yeah. I think that's a video feature there. And this is the process I think I went through to do that. So I was reflecting on what I did myself. Is that fairly similar to sort of what you went through? So the point is that, the point I'm trying to make is that even a sort of like innocuous little subskill like identifying the text type is itself made up of a lot of steps which, you know, if you're looking at teaching this at lower levels, those steps could be taught individually almost, or they could be taught in small groups. There's so much to do on subskills. And I think that subskills could, you know, you could include a subskills focus in all reading and listening lessons. And in fact, on a recent project, I won't name the project, but on a recent project I was involved in, we did just that. We added a subskills focus to every reading and listening lesson. I wasn't really sure about the wisdom of doing that at first, but the more I worked on the idea, the more it seemed to make sort of perfect sense. And I became a subskills convert, if you like. And the reasons for this are, I'll just flick through the reasons why I think it's such a good idea. First of all, it puts the emphasis on learning how to read and listen rather than on providing practice in reading and listening. Referring back to what I was saying before, some students don't naturally acquire these subskills unless they're pointed out. So I think systematically, comprehensively going through subskills, focusing on subskills, is helpful in that sense. And it gives them skills they can take away with them. I mean, if a lesson on reading, you do learn things, but one of the things you should always take away with you from a lesson on reading or listening is learning how to do something, how to do the skill itself, developing the skill itself. So it makes students autonomous. There's also sort of like it brings variety to class, because you're focusing more comprehensively on subskills, it forces you to bring a larger variety of text types to your classes to be able to develop those subskills. And it forces you to think of tasks that are appropriate for developing those subskills. You know, true-false questions or comprehension questions won't develop all the different subskills that students need to acquire when they're learning. It's engaging. I think a focus on subskills can get round the occasional sort of reticence to listen to just another text or read just another text. Subskills sort of make students into linguistic detectives, where they're looking for other clues around the text to help them get the most from it. And I think that's an engaging thing for teenagers and adults. Students need them. I mean, that's obvious. That should be obvious already. But I was looking at the first certificate handbook, and my pointer. I mean, I just thought I have never focused on this, and I've never seen a focus on attitude or tone or implication. I mean, students are expected to be able to do these things, to draw implications from text, but there doesn't seem to be a focus on teaching them how to do it. There's another reason for giving subskills more attention, I think. I think it's relatively easy to do, to add to materials if they're not there already. And this is the main point of the talk, is doing it rather than sort of like finding it in the course book, to add it where it's not there, if you think this is a good idea. And I'm just going to go through, I'll go back there. I'm going to look at a piece of material just very briefly, just to show how it can be done, because I think it makes it clearer to give it a context. So on this project we were working on, I was working with one of the authors, we made the subskill the aim of the lesson. So it's very clear from the beginning that students are aware of the fact they're going to learn to do something related, they're going to learn how to read or listen to something in a certain way. And then we decided to put the subskill into sort of these tips. I think tips are easier than a continuous text for students to take in. So students read a series of tips there, a short, simple series of tips. Then they do an activity, that's that one there. Oh, no, it's not that one there. I missed my clicker. There it's there. That's it. That gets them to use the subskill, and then here they reflect on doing that afterwards. So they actually sort of think, did those tips help me to get what my teacher wanted me to from that text? And the answer may be no, but at least they're reflecting on the process and they're thinking about about how it worked for them and how it helped them or didn't help them. And from adding these tips to a 6-level course, which is quite a large job, these are the tips that, if you're interested in doing this yourself, these would be tips that I've learned from doing that. The first thing to do is to think about how and why you read or listen to a particular text. And then based on that, is think about what would students find difficult about that process. How could you help them to make that process easier for them? Choose a subskill. So once you've thought about what would make it difficult, you could choose something to focus on which would help them to get more from the text. And it's simply sort of 3 or 4 tips, and some of them can be very pointing out the obvious. I mean, sometimes students need to, this sort of like, don't read every sentence. It's done to death in a sense, but it's obvious. But it's a point that maybe may not be obvious to students, at least some students. And then the preparation phase. From observing classes in different contexts and in different parts of the world for over the last couple of years, it's surprising to me how many times you see that sort of preparation phase is skipped. I mean, it's quite often you see somebody focusing on the information in the text, but not that sort of like looking again and again at what the form of the text and the clues that are available to try and help you make comprehension more successful. It's very important to recycle things and do them in parts. For example, you could looking for information is one thing, but maybe there's a text later on that you want to use in your class that uses headings. So headings could be added to finding information and review and allow you to review it. You need a simple task. And at higher levels, it sort of seems to work to sort of combine and extend things. So scanning for information could become finding information efficiently. So you would get students to identify the text type, think about its organisation, where information is normally distributed in that particular text type, and also to not read every word. So you sort of expand and combine skills. And that is the theory. And this is the workshop-y bit where I hope that you'll feel comfortable sort of trying some things out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you 3 different texts. One's an audio text, one's a video, and one's a written text. And I'm going to show you the text, and I'd like you to think about, as you listen, read, or watch them, think about a sub-skill you think might be appropriate for you to bring to class to help your students make the most of that text. And hopefully I'll get you to sort of have a little natter to somebody next to you to make that a little bit more interactive. This is the first one. The audio is related to the picture. The picture supports the audio, so do use that to help make sense of it.
As you all know, we're going to have to start paying to use this space next month, so we need to discuss how. Who'd like to begin?
Shall I start? I think we should pay a membership fee to be part of the drama group.
No. Can I just add something here? All other clubs charge a fee.
What do you think, Eva?
I think a fee's a good idea. That's fine if you can afford it, but I'm not saying I want to pay. Can I just finish what I was saying? Sorry, go on. I'd just like to say that if there's a fee, I'll have to stop coming.
Let's hear what Al has to say. Al, you helped set up the group.
That's right. We spent weeks looking for a place and this was the only free option.
Perhaps I can say something here. Maybe it's us who should charge.
That makes no sense. I mean...
Just a minute, Liam. Let him finish.
We could charge for performances and use ticket sales to pay back our membership fee.
If practical, could you just very briefly see if the person next to you had a similar idea?
subskills that you could actually use. That's the
Yeah, what was it?
what do we do? An obvious one is what you actually set the context first. Explain what it means. Well, there was clearly a lot of emphasis on that, so there could be whether it's a skill, it's but I think by reading the text, I mean, if we said this is students discussing whether or not they should charge for.
Okay, I'll stop you there. Just when you were getting going, would somebody like to say a couple of ideas? Stressed words. Yeah, I was interested watching Catherine Waters yesterday. She was making that point about learning to sort of recognise stressed words. Any?
Turn taking.
Turn taking. Yeah.
Identifying speakers.
Identifying speakers.
Ways to agree or disagree nicely or just nicely.
Yeah. All great ideas. This is what I thought of. I mean, this actually doesn't come from the project. This is something I listened to that, and this is what I thought would be an interesting thing to focus on. I tried this with Robert. In fact, how many speakers are there? And it's a deceptively difficult task. So I'm not sure that. Yeah, I think it would be quite a high-level activity. But certainly turn-takings. Students find it hard to listen to more than two speakers. So giving them some assistance in learning to recognise the markers for turn-taking, I think would help. The video now. These are two teenagers, the two Vox Pop videos of teenagers talking in the street. They're non-scripted. I've used ones that I know the source of for legal reasons, but you can find this sort of stuff on YouTube. Again, I'll play it, and as you watch, think about what subskill might help students to. There it goes.
My name's Shay, and what I'm wearing from the bottom is some brown boots here, and they've lasted me like 2 years, which is amazing. And I'm wearing some leggings, and they're patterned and really bright and colourful, which I think goes nicely with the brown because it's very different. So yeah, I'm wearing a scarf because it's freezing, and I think it's nice. It kind of goes with it. It's kind of creamy. It's nice, and I've got a top that kind of matches with it because the patterns on here are kind of pink and colourful, so I think that goes nicely with it. I got a big jacket that I got from the States, and it's really cozy and really warm, so it's great. And I got my leather bag here that I got a few weeks ago, so I think that goes nicely with the outfit.
Hi, my name is Weston. I'm wearing my puffer jacket, probably one of my favourites. I like it, keeps me nice and warm. My white shirt, got it like 2 weeks ago out to the street. My black jeans, probably my favourite jeans, they go with everything. My canvas shoes, bought them like a year ago. Didn't get new ones, but yeah, they're nice. My beanie, got this like a week ago. Yeah, it's probably one of my favourites right now.
Quick comparison. With Yeah, I should mention this because it seems to be really. I do struggle. I'll talk about that. I'll talk about it. It's a good question. Okay, we can ask that now.
This is actually quite just one of the discussions.
Yeah, okay. the strict teacher there and wait. Couple of ideas. Pause fillers. Body language. Yeah. Yeah. I had a question here, and this is something I'm going to think about a bit before answering. The difference between a subskill and a function. And there's 5 minutes. Is that 5 minutes? Yeah, okay. I went for this. But natural speech, I thought at lower levels, if students are trying to make sense of this, then understanding that some of the features don't matter, they don't need to be distracted by them, or understanding that they're not going to have a subject before every verb might just help them to be able to forget those distractions and focus on something, just listing what clothes they mention.
Also, clothes you don't know, like beanie, is not a word you get taught.
Yeah.
It's more hat, cap, but they have to relate that new word to something for the head.
Yeah.
Making an abstraction.
Yeah, I mean, this is where the crossover between function and language and subskill comes. And I'm not clear myself where the cut-off point is. I mean, we'll come back to that at the end, maybe. Is anybody familiar with this? Wit-Attainment's Code of Conduct. It's from the BBC Radio 5 live radio broadcast on cinema, and they've got this. They've drawn up a code of conduct for going to the cinema. I'd like you to read this, and we'll do the same thing. If you can, I hope that's clear enough. Okay, time to read that. So maybe the group, given the time restrictions, maybe a group discussion bit. I'll skip that. Just what jumps out at you as the sort of sub-skill? Something that would help students make sense of this.
Recognising humour.
Recognising humour. Sarcasm. Pictures and headings. So the heading, using headings to help you make sense, and pictures. Yeah, that. So at lower levels, using pictures and headings to help you make sense. Yeah. I went for that first that. Oh, too fast. Thank you. I'll take back my thanks and go here. Identifying the tone of the text. I mean, it's not a really difficult text, but it might be difficult for students just to note. Just maybe they will think, is this being serious or not? But it's wonderfully funny if you understand it. Very culturally specific. So that could be something to watch out for. Okay, and one last thing. That's one way round, but sometimes you end up with subskills that you want to use with text, which sounds odd maybe, but thinking back to the first certificate, if you want to get students to recognise attitude or tone or implication, then you need to sort of find text that will allow you to do that. For one of the markets in this project that we were working on, they asked specifically for some work on understanding spoken instruction. So you may come across your curriculum giving you a need for a subskill. I don't think there's time to do this, but I was going to ask you to try and think of a text type that you would. So maybe just call them out. I mean, understanding spoken instructions. cabin crew instructions, recipes,
Manuals.
manuals,
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
all those how-to videos,
Yeah, you're right.
how to install a ceiling fan, which is what I had to do recently. Understand a writer's attitude. It's connected to tone really, but it's... Right, I've been asked to finish, I will. I thought here, like comments at the end of things on the internet, comments. You know, before responding to a comment, it's quite important to understand exactly what the attitude of the person you're responding to is. And being an active listener, I thought this would be fun because that's what you've been doing, and me, when I've been listening to you. Thank you. If you find any of this controversial or don't think it made any sense or want to sort of do anything, or contact me. This is a new website, and it's got a contact form. And if you were curious about the course I was mentioning, it was beyond. But I deliberately didn't want this to be a commercial talk, so that's why it's come right at the end. I don't think there are time for questions, but I'll stay here if you have got questions. And thank you for participating.